AITA for refusing to let my brother use my house for a baby shower he already told everyone was happening there. So my brother and his wife are expecting their first kid, which is genuinely exciting, and I am happy for them. About 3 weeks ago, my sister-in-law apparently decided she wanted her baby shower at my place because I have the biggest house in the family and a nice backyard. Fine concept. Problem is, nobody asked me. My brother just told her yes on my behalf, and then invites went out to like 35 people with my address. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my brother use my house for a baby shower he already told everyone was happening there? So my brother and his wife are expecting their first kid, which is genuinely exciting, and I am happy for them. About 3 weeks ago, my sister-in-law apparently decided she wanted her baby shower at my place because I have the biggest house in the family and a nice backyard. The concept itself wasn't unreasonable. What was unreasonable was that nobody bothered to ask me first. My brother just told her yes on my behalf without a single conversation. Then invitations went out to 35 people with my address printed right there on the cards. I didn't find out through my brother. I didn't find out through his wife. I found out when my aunt texted me asking what she could bring to the party. That's how I learned my home had been volunteered for a major family event without my knowledge or consent. I called my brother immediately. I told him he couldn't just make decisions about my property without talking to me first. But there was another problem, one much bigger than the lack of permission. The date they had chosen was during a really bad week for me personally. That particular week marks the anniversary of losing someone very important to me. It's a time when I need to be left completely alone because I don't handle it well. I never have handled it well, and my brother knows this. He has known about this difficult time for me for years. When I explained the situation, he said he didn't realize the dates lined up. He apologized, but then came the request that made everything worse. He said the invitations were already out there in people's hands. Could I just push through it this one time? Could I just get over my grief for one day so his wife could have her party? I said no. I told him I couldn't have 35 people in my house during that week of all weeks. I just couldn't do it. That's when the family warfare began. The family group chat turned into something resembling a courtroom trial, with me cast as the defendant, facing charges of ruining everything. The messages started flying. I was selfish, they said. I was making her pregnancy all about myself. Then came the suggestion that hit like a slap across the face. Someone actually told me I could just grieve in my room while the party happened downstairs. Just hide upstairs like a problem to be tucked away, while dozens of people celebrated in my own home during the worst week of my year. The casual cruelty of that suggestion was breathtaking. My brother, the person who had created this entire mess by making promises he had no right to make, went completely quiet in the chat. His silence felt heavier than if he had been yelling at me. At least anger would have been some kind of response. The quiet felt like abandonment. His wife, to her credit, hasn't said anything to me directly. I actually respect that she's staying out of the direct confrontation. She's probably caught in the middle of something she never asked to be part of. But the rest of the family won't let it go. The messages keep coming, each one painting me as the villain in this story. I know the timing is terrible. I know it's not her fault that my brother made promises without checking with me first. I know she's probably excited about her baby shower, and now everything is falling apart. But the fundamental problem remains the same. Nobody asked me if they could use my house. Nobody checked if that date worked for me. And when it turned out the date was during the most difficult week of my year, nobody seemed to think my feelings mattered at all. The family is acting like I'm being petty or difficult, but they're missing the bigger picture. This isn't just about one party or one inconvenient date. It's about respect and boundaries and the assumption that my space and my emotional well-being are just resources to be used without permission. It reveals so much about how some of my family members view my grief and my needs. They see it as something that can be scheduled around, compartmentalized, and tucked away when it becomes inconvenient for their plans. They think I can just flip a switch and be the perfect hostess while dealing with the anniversary of a devastating loss. What they don't understand is that grief doesn't work that way. Trauma doesn't work that way. The week surrounding that anniversary isn't just sad for me, it's destabilizing. Having my house full of people, being responsible for hosting duties, putting on a happy face for a celebration, it would be like asking me to perform surgery while having a panic attack. Technically possible, maybe, but cruel to ask and dangerous to attempt. My brother's continued silence in the group chat speaks volumes. He knows he messed up. He knows he should have asked me before making promises about my house. He knows the date is significant and painful for me. But instead of standing up to the family pressure and admitting his mistake, he's letting me take all the heat alone. The person who created this problem has stepped back and left me to face the consequences by myself. I keep thinking about that moment when my aunt texted me about bringing something to the party. The shock of learning that my private space had been committed to a major event without my knowledge. The realization that invitations were already circulating with my address on them. The understanding that I was expected to just go along with decisions made about my own home without my input. There's something deeply violating about having your space volunteered without permission. It's not just about the inconvenience or the timing, though both of those matter. It's about the assumption that my house is family property to be allocated as needed. It's about the belief that my consent is optional when family celebrations are involved. The family keeps focusing on the baby shower itself, as if I'm opposed to celebrating the pregnancy. That's not the issue at all. I'm happy about the baby. I want his wife to have a beautiful celebration. What I can't accept is the way this was handled, and the timing that was chosen, without any regard for my emotional state during that particular week. They could have asked me before sending invitations. We could have discussed dates that would work for everyone. We could have found solutions that didn't involve me hosting during the anniversary of my loss. But instead, decisions were made, invitations were sent, and I was expected to just adapt to plans made without my input. The accusation that I'm making her pregnancy about myself is particularly painful because it's so backwards. I'm not trying to center myself in her celebration. I'm trying to protect my own emotional well-being during a time when I'm already struggling. The fact that some family members can't see the difference between those two things says a lot about how they view boundaries and self-care. My brother's silence has become the loudest voice in this whole situation. Every day that passes without him acknowledging what he did wrong or standing up for my right to have boundaries in my own home makes the hurt deeper. He put me in this position by making unauthorized promises, and now he's letting the family treat me like the villain, while he stays safely out of the crossfire. The suggestion about hiding in my room during the party keeps replaying in my mind, because it captures everything wrong with how some people think about grief and trauma. They want the benefits of using my space without dealing with the reality of my emotional needs. They want to celebrate in my house while I disappear upstairs like an inconvenient secret. They want me to provide the venue while hiding the very real human cost of their timing choice. That week, every year, I need my home to be a sanctuary. I need to know that I won't be interrupted, that I won't have to perform normalcy for other people, that I can fall apart safely if I need to. The idea of having 35 family members in my space during that time feels like having a party in a hospital room. Technically possible, but fundamentally inappropriate given what's really happening. The family group chat continues to ping with new messages, new arguments, new attempts to change my mind. But underneath all the noise about selfishness and family obligations, the basic facts remain unchanged. Nobody asked me before using my house for their plans. Nobody considered my emotional state during the chosen week. Nobody seems to think my boundaries matter when they conflict with party planning. And the person who caused this whole situation by making promises he couldn't keep has gone silent instead of taking responsibility for the mess he created. I can't have 35 people in my house during the anniversary of losing someone I loved. I just can't. Update to MIL told me to stop breastfeeding. Thank you everyone for your comments on the last post. I read them all even though I didn't reply to anyone, but it made me feel much better that it didn't seem like I was overreacting. And I've got a list of things to reply to her in the future that I can practice with. My husband spoke to my MIL about it, and I just wanted to share. It was weeks later when her husband finally had the conversation with his mother. She made sure she wasn't there. She didn't want to be in the room when he confronted his mom about telling her to stop breastfeeding their son. The tension had been building since that day, and now it was time for him to handle his mother. He started the conversation carefully. He brought up how their son didn't sleep well over the weekend when they visited, how the baby struggled in the new environment, tossing and turning in the unfamiliar space. His mother nodded along, agreeing that it can be hard to settle children in new places. She seemed understanding, even sympathetic, about her grandson's difficult night. Then he shifted the conversation to breastfeeding. His mother's tone changed completely. "Breastfeeding is more than food," she said, suddenly sounding like an expert on the topic. She talked about his wife differently now. "It's her personal journey," his mother added, as if she had always been supportive of her daughter-in-law's choices. This was exactly the opening he needed. "Great. So let's not make comments about breastfeeding to OP," he said directly. The room went quiet for a moment. His mother's expression shifted. The understanding, sympathetic grandmother disappeared. "What? I didn't make any comments," she said immediately. Her voice had an edge to it now. The denial came so quickly, so automatically, like she had been preparing for this moment. Like she knew exactly what conversation they were about to have. He told her she did make comments. He had heard the story from his wife. He knew what happened that weekend, what his mother had said about the breastfeeding, how uncomfortable she had made his wife feel in their own family dynamic. His mother's response was swift and certain. "I wouldn't do that. I don't remember saying anything like that to her." The words came out smoothly, confidently. No hesitation, no pause to actually think back to that weekend. No attempt to recall the conversation or consider that maybe she had said something inappropriate. Just complete denial, as if the conversation never happened, as if his wife had imagined the whole thing or was lying about what was said. His mother stood there, looking at her son, maintaining her innocence with absolute conviction. He pressed forward anyway. He told her not to say anything about breastfeeding in the future. A clear boundary, spelled out explicitly, so there could be no confusion or misunderstanding later. No room for interpretation or claims that she didn't know what was appropriate. She said, "Okay," simple agreement to his request. But the damage was already done. The gaslighting had already happened. The denial was already on the table between them. When her husband came home and told her about the conversation, she felt a mix of emotions. Relief that he had actually confronted his mother. Satisfaction that his mother had been told off and had to face what she had done. But underneath those feelings was something much more troubling. The gaslighting was infuriating. His mother claiming she never made any comments about breastfeeding, acting like the conversation never happened, looking her son in the eye and denying something they both knew was true. There was no way she didn't remember. The conversation hadn't happened months ago or years ago. It was recent enough that the hurt was still fresh. Recent enough that they had just been discussing their son's sleep issues from that same weekend. She remembered everything else about their visit, but suddenly had complete amnesia when it came to her inappropriate comments about breastfeeding. She just didn't want to own what she said. Didn't want to take responsibility for making her daughter-in-law uncomfortable. Didn't want to admit that maybe she had overstepped boundaries or said something wrong. It was easier to pretend it never happened than to acknowledge the impact of her words. The pattern was becoming clear. This wasn't just about breastfeeding comments. This was about how his mother handled conflict, how she dealt with being called out on her behavior. Complete denial, followed by fake agreement to keep the peace. No real accountability. No genuine understanding of what she had done wrong. His mother had shown her true colors in that conversation. When pressed about her inappropriate comments, she didn't apologize. She didn't say she misspoke, or that she didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable. She didn't acknowledge that breastfeeding decisions were personal and none of her business. Instead, she chose to gaslight her own son, to make him question what he knew to be true, to make his wife seem like she was either lying or oversensitive, or imagining things that didn't happen. The okay at the end felt hollow now. Not like genuine agreement to respect boundaries, but like empty words to end an uncomfortable conversation. Like she was saying what he wanted to hear, so they could move on and pretend everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. The relationship between her and her mother-in-law had shifted. The trust was damaged. How could she feel comfortable around someone who would look her husband in the eye and deny something they both knew happened? How many other times had his mother done this? How many other inappropriate comments or boundary violations had been forgotten or denied when confronted. How many times had she made family members question their own memories and experiences? The gaslighting was almost worse than the original comments about breastfeeding. At least those comments were direct. This denial was manipulative, calculated to make her seem unreliable or dramatic. It was designed to protect his mother's image while undermining her credibility. She wondered if her husband fully understood what had happened in that conversation, if he recognized the manipulation for what it was, or if he was just relieved that his mother had agreed to stop making comments in the future. The agreement meant nothing without acknowledgement. Without his mother actually understanding why the comments were inappropriate, there was no reason to believe she wouldn't make similar comments about other parenting choices. Sleep training, solid foods, discipline, screen time. Every decision they made as parents could become fodder for unwanted opinions and criticism. And if they called her out again, would she remember those future comments? Or would there be more convenient amnesia, more claims that conversations never happened, more gaslighting disguised as confusion? The pattern was established now. His mother had shown how she handled accountability. The next test would be whether she actually followed through on her agreement, or found new ways to insert herself into their parenting decisions. But the bigger issue remained unresolved. How do you build a relationship with someone who denies reality when it's inconvenient for them? How do you trust someone who gaslights your spouse about conversations that definitely happened? Her husband had done his part by confronting his mother and setting a clear boundary. But the foundation of their family relationships had shifted. His mother's response had revealed something fundamental about her character and how she handled conflict. The breastfeeding comments were just the beginning. The real issue was the complete lack of accountability that followed. The willingness to make her own son question what he knew to be true, rather than simply acknowledge inappropriate behavior and apologize. She felt vindicated that her husband had witnessed his mother's behavior firsthand now. He had seen the gaslighting, the denial, the manipulation. He couldn't dismiss it as miscommunication or misunderstanding anymore. His mother had made a choice in that conversation. She chose to deny rather than apologize. She chose to gaslight rather than take responsibility. She chose to protect her ego rather than repair the relationship with her daughter-in-law. Those choices would have consequences. Trust, once broken by gaslighting, is difficult to rebuild. Every future interaction would be colored by the knowledge that his mother was capable of looking them in the eye and denying reality when confronted about her behavior. The conversation was over, the boundary was set, and his mother had agreed to stop making comments about breastfeeding. But the real damage was already done. She had shown exactly who she was when backed into a corner. And now they all had to live with that knowledge. But his family had other ideas. The tension started when they began suggesting a black tie wedding would be great for two main reasons. First, their wedding was black tie, so naturally ours should follow suit. Second, our venues would be perfect for it. The ceremony and reception venues are traditional and classy in style. Think Victorian architecture with all the ornate details and elegant atmosphere. They kept insisting these locations would suit a black tie event perfectly. What his family didn't seem to understand was that these venues worked just fine for a formal wedding without going full black tie. Three-piece suits for the men would look absolutely appropriate and elegant in those settings. The Victorian style doesn't automatically demand tuxedos and floor-length gowns. Formal doesn't have to mean black tie. But his family wouldn't let it go. They egged us on consistently about having a black tie event, bringing it up at every family gathering, every phone call, every casual conversation about wedding plans. They made comment after comment about how fitting it would be, how perfect the venues were for that level of formality, how elegant everything would look. The pressure was constant and relentless. This isn't what I wanted or envisioned for our special day. 8 years of conversations with my fiance had never included black tie fantasies. We had talked about elegant, formal, beautiful, but never about the strict dress codes and stuffy atmosphere that comes with black tie events. He doesn't like confrontation and easily caves to familial pressure when his parents or siblings start pushing for something. Throughout all of this family pressure, he had consistently expressed not wanting black tie either. We were united in our vision. We both preferred the idea of formal but not stuffy, elegant but not rigid. Then came the suit shopping trip. His family and him went together to look at options. I didn't go with them. Maybe I should have seen that as a red flag. When he came back that day, everything had shifted. Suddenly he had a black tie option that he claimed was of his own choice. I've seen the tuxedo he picked out, and I'm not a fan of the materials chosen. The fabric feels cheap, and the colors are all wrong for what I envisioned for our wedding day. When I compare it to the suit options he had chosen before the family shopping trip, there's no contest. The suits are better quality, better colors, and they actually match the vision we had spent 8 years developing together. I am very upset with him, because it feels like he completely caved to the pressure from his family. After all those conversations where we agreed on what we wanted, after all the times he said he didn't want black tie either, one shopping trip with his parents, and suddenly he's considering tuxedos. The fact that I have expressed multiple times that I don't want black tie makes this whole situation feel deeply disrespectful to me, as his future wife. His response when I confronted him about this only made things worse. He says that even if he and his groomsmen are wearing tuxedos, the guests won't have to follow black tie dress code. He's trying to present this as a compromise, like we can have it both ways. But I can see right through this logic. This feels like just a precursor of things to come. I know his parents, and I know how they operate. If he chooses the tuxedo, they're going to use that as ammunition to push for the whole event to be black tie. They'll say the wedding party looks so elegant in formal wear that the guests should match that energy. They'll point out how perfect the venues are for black tie, which was their original argument anyway. They'll gradually escalate the pressure until our entire wedding has been transformed into their vision instead of ours. The tuxedo itself is another source of frustration. I honestly don't like it because of the colors and fabric choices. It looks like something picked out by committee, rather than something my fiance genuinely loves. The materials feel synthetic and cheap when you touch them. The color is this weird shade that doesn't complement the palette we had chosen for our wedding. Everything about it screams family pressure, rather than groom's choice. What makes this even more painful is seeing how easily he folded under pressure. 8 years together, and in one moment, it felt like all that time and understanding was thrown out the window. And I thought I knew how he handled difficult situations with his family. I knew he was more passive than me, but I didn't realize he would completely abandon our shared vision the moment his parents started pushing hard enough. It makes me question how other major decisions will go in our marriage. Will he always choose keeping his family happy over what we agreed on as a couple? The disrespect is what cuts the deepest. We had talked about this specific issue multiple times. I had been clear about not wanting black tie. He had agreed and expressed the same preference. We were supposed to be a team making decisions together about our wedding day. Instead, I feel like I'm suddenly fighting against his entire family, while he stands on the sidelines, unable or unwilling to back up what we had decided together. His family's behavior throughout this process has been increasingly frustrating. They act like their preferences and their wedding experience should dictate how we plan our celebration. The constant comments and suggestions feel like they're trying to wear us down through sheer persistence. They're not respecting that we're adults who can make our own decisions about our own wedding. The venue argument is particularly annoying because it's based on this false premise that Victorian-style spaces require black tie dress codes. Beautiful traditional venues can accommodate many different levels of formality. A three-piece suit looks perfectly appropriate and elegant in a Victorian setting. The architecture and decor don't become less impressive just because the men are wearing suits instead of tuxedos. I keep wondering if this is genuinely something he wants now, or if the family pressure has just worn him down completely. When someone is passive and conflict-averse, it can be hard to tell the difference between genuine preference and exhausted capitulation. Has he actually changed his mind about what he wants for our wedding? Or is he just taking the path of least resistance with his family? The timing makes it even more suspicious. For years, through dozens of wedding conversations, he never once expressed interest in black tie or tuxedos. Then one shopping trip with his parents, and suddenly he's bringing home formal wear options he claims to have chosen himself. The coincidence is too obvious to ignore. I'm angry with his family for their persistent pressure and inability to respect our wishes. I'm angry with him for caving to that pressure and abandoning the vision we had built together. I'm frustrated with the whole situation because it feels like our wedding is being slowly hijacked by people who aren't even getting married. The material and color issues with the tuxedo feel symbolic of the larger problem. This isn't just about choosing between a suit and a tuxedo. It's about choosing between what we want as a couple and what his family wants for us. The cheap fabric and wrong colors represent everything that happens when outside pressure overrides careful planning and personal preference. Maybe this really is something he genuinely wants now. Maybe seeing the tuxedo options made him realize he actually prefers formal wear. Maybe his family's arguments about the venues actually convinced him, rather than pressured him. But the timing and his previous consistency make that explanation hard to believe. The guest dress code issue he raised shows how he's not thinking this through completely. If the wedding party is in tuxedos and the venues are Victorian and elegant, guests are going to feel pressure to dress up to that level regardless of what the invitations say. Social dynamics don't work the way he's suggesting. People will see the formal wedding party photos, hear about the venue style, and assume they need to dress accordingly. His family will absolutely use his tuxedo choice as leverage for escalating the formality of the entire event. I can already imagine the conversations. They'll suggest that since the groom looks so handsome in his tuxedo, wouldn't it be wonderful if the whole celebration matched that elegance? They'll point out how the venues really do call for that level of formality. They'll gradually push until we're planning exactly the wedding they wanted from the beginning. The fact that I don't like the specific tuxedo he chose adds another layer of conflict. Even if I were willing to compromise on the black tie issue, I genuinely think the suit options he originally selected look better on him and fit our wedding vision better. The colors work with our palette. The materials look and feel more expensive. Everything about the suits says quality and thoughtfulness. Meanwhile, the tuxedo looks like something chosen hastily under pressure. The synthetic-feeling fabric catches light wrong. The color doesn't complement the other elements we've chosen for our wedding. It's the kind of formal wear that looks formal from a distance, but cheap up close, which seems like a perfect metaphor for this whole situation. I'm questioning whether I should put my foot down completely and refuse to budge on this issue, or whether there's room for compromise somewhere. But every compromise feels like it leads down a slippery slope toward the full black tie wedding his family wants. Give an inch on the groom's attire, and they'll take a mile on everything else. The disrespect aspect keeps bothering me more than anything else. I've been clear about my preferences. I've explained why black tie doesn't fit our vision. I've expressed how important this is to me. And yet here we are, with him bringing home tuxedo options and trying to present it as his independent choice. It feels like my voice in our wedding planning has been completely undermined. Am I the asshole for being upset and angry with him and his family? The anger feels justified given how this situation has developed. Or should I be more understanding that this is maybe something he genuinely wants? The doubt creeps in because relationships require compromise, but this feels less like compromise and more like capitulation to outside pressure on what should be our shared decision.